Do you want
Robert?
the
Oh,
introduction?
introduction.
Yeah. I'm Robert Mawson. I'm the city manager in Bandon.
I'm Will Bailey. I'm the chair of the Coos County Noxious Weed Control District Advisory Board.
I'm Rochelle Settlemeyer. I'm the local Gorse Action Group project coordinator.
And I'm Carrie Carrasco. I'm with the Oregon Department of Agriculture's Noxious Weed Program, and I work with 5 counties in Southwest Oregon, including Coos County.
Do you want us to kick it off?
Please kick it off.
I think I'm up first. So first I want to just thank you for allowing us to come to your annual meeting. I think it's a once-a-year event. You get a chance to talk, and we're kind of interjecting ourselves in the middle of this, but we appreciate you giving us time today. You have a beautiful view out here and a beautiful place, so I can't think of a better setting to talk about Gorse. We are all about Gorse today. As was Suzanne mentioned, as a city, as a county, as a region, we began talking about Gorse about 3 years ago. We began to work as a collaborative group of agencies, local governments, universities, you name it, to see what we can do about Gorse. Gorse has become a very invasive species in the south coast of Oregon. It's spreading, it's moving, it's growing in place. It's becoming a bigger and bigger threat, not only to native species, but also to us in the form of a fire problem. As you're aware, this area suffered catastrophic fires a few times, and we are bound and determined to keep that from happening again. So our efforts are to try to eradicate Gorse, and that's pretty close to impossibility, but it's something that we would like to do. The seed bank for Gorse stays in the ground for many years, and I don't know that we can ever get rid of it, but we can certainly try to control it and remove as much as we can. So as a city, the city council passed a few months ago amendments to the prohibited vegetation portion of our ordinance. Essentially, there were exemptions in our prior ordinance that allowed people to use Gorse as hedge, to keep it on their property as long as it was under 12 inches tall. You know, there were certain things that basically allowed Gorse to continue to propagate, to grow, and to move. Seed pods for Gorse will burst, spreading seeds out into the street, other places. Car tires pick it up, they move it around, people walking, animals carry it about. So just having Gorse around makes it difficult to control because it continues to grow and spread. So council felt it was a wise decision to remove exemptions for Gorse. And in the past, as a city, in our attempts to control Gorse and other noxious vegetation, we probably haven't done a very good job of communicating with property owners in personalizing some of our approaches, and we sent out some letters that probably shouldn't have been sent out in the fashion they were done, and we've upset people, and rightfully so. I've read some of the letters, I understand the concerns. But in working with the Gorse Action Group and becoming more and more educated and understanding how this plant works, we've decided to change our tactics and how we deal with this. We decided to work more closely with the experts, with people who really know how this plant operates, know how to deal with it, how to control it, how to keep it from spreading, who have best practices in mind and have developed these things, so that we now are looking at Gorse in more of a management approach, where property owners will be able to develop management plans for their property so that they can deal with Gorse and eventually other noxious weeds. So our approach is different. We are no longer sending letters. Those letters that we have sent, we are not pursuing the actions that have been explained in these letters. We are taking our tactics a little different. and we are becoming more personal with the property owners. We, again, as I said, working with experts to get them connected with our property owners to develop ways to deal with Gorse in a more effective manner. So I'm here today to tell you we're changing our philosophy, to apologize if any of you received these letters. I know you're outside the city limits, but it doesn't mean this is the only property you're associated with, or perhaps you had friends that received these letters, and I want you to know that we are not pursuing those. We are doing things differently now. One of the things that we're also looking at in conjunction with the county, because Gorse is not a city problem, it is, as I said, a southern, southwest Oregon coast problem. We are working hand in hand with the county to see what we can do to help deal with Gorse, at least in the immediate areas of the city of Bandon. We have a work session, I believe, on Tuesday morning coming up. We've been in conversations with their representatives for quite some time. They also participate in the Gorse Action Group. We are discussing the potential of an IGA to allow the city to administer this new ordinance that we've developed in the urban growth boundaries of the city. Now, this is one of the urban growth boundaries that have been identified in the city planning, Sunset City out here. The major urban growth boundary that we have concern for is what we call the donut hole, which is essentially right in the center of the city, but is county jurisdiction. The other urban growth boundary that we have runs down along 101 on the east side and goes down around the airport. So that's the other portion of urban growth. There's 3 of them that the city's identified. Our major concern, as I mentioned, is the donut hole. That's what started all of this. We are concerned about the accumulation of Gorse within that area in such close proximity to housing, commercial properties, you name it, our parks. It borders a great deal of our community. If something were to occur in that donut hole area, we could see some catastrophic results. So that's, as I said, where we really want to focus. Now, we're meeting with the county. We're going to talk a little bit about these things. I would say if we were to prioritize A, B, and C in having an effect on these urban growth boundaries, that this area would probably be third of the 3, not because it is least important of the 3, but because there are groups like you who have already taken some action in these areas. I know you have some property owners that have done some gorse removal down here. You have the ability to work within your organization here to contact experts like Carrie and Rochelle to talk about your properties out here, to see what you can do to manage that area. And when those kinds of things are taking place, then we don't feel the need to get involved in those areas. That is not happening in the donut hole. The donut hole has a number of property owners who are absentee. They aren't in there. They might be 3rd, 4th generation. They're trusts. I think there are 150 some property owners in that area. You know, there are probably 20, 30 that are in this area. The rest of them are out. We really need to have some way to deal with that area. So again, we won't go in there and start sending letters and threatening fines and so on. We want to go in there and say, this is what we can do to help. This is how we can work as a group to do better in not only reducing the risk to surrounding properties, but reducing the risk to their properties themselves. The sidebar of all this is if we can get rid of a lot of this gorse, we are able to return some of these properties back into a profitable or a developable piece of land. And we've been able to recapture some of these things. The biggest and brightest example of that happening is Bandon Dunes Golf Course. When Mike Kaiser bought that property, he bought it inexpensively because it was covered with gorse. So once he was able to go in there with his developers and clean all that gorse off, you can see what the result has been. And they continue to fight that gorse up there day in and day out on different parts of their property, and they stay on top of it. But there are areas around them that, as recently as 2017, have had fires among that gorse, and luckily they've been able to get them controlled and put out. So gorse is not a fun thing. But I wanted to mention the IGA. I wanted to tell you that we're in conference with the county. We are concerned about this invasive species, and we want to do everything we can to take care of it and control it and remove it. I understand, a lot of the concern in areas like this are how gorse exists on the bluff and how it may assist with keeping erosion and so forth from happening, and we understand that better now than we did before. And with the experts that we've enlisted and we work with, there are ways to deal with that as well. And I don't want to get too much into that because there's other people here that will talk. But if you have any questions concerning the city's ordinance, concerning the IGA, our efforts to help control gorse, please, I know you're not part of the city limits, but you're our neighbors, and we would certainly help in any way we can and answer any questions. So with that, I'll end my spiel at this time. We'll do question and answer, I guess, at some point during the program, but I don't want to take all the time. So thank you.
Carrie, I think you ought to go next.
Okay. In keeping of time, we have some packets that we'd like to hand out. Maybe I can help you do that. We only have 10, so I don't know if there are couples here or families here, or you can share amongst yourselves. We have lots of resources in this packet, including information about the Gorse Action Group. There's a brochure in the front. I'm going to take one and do it. Okay. We have, at the first part of the packet is frequently asked questions concerning steep slopes is one of them we get often. We also get questions about habitat. Dunes are a very important part of our coast, and like the snowy plover and things that utilize dunes. So we often get questions about gorse removal and sensitive habitats. So again, lots of our questions that we normally get are included on a frequently asked question sheet for you. We also have a copy, and this is what I'm going to be speaking to you about. And I guess it's the second piece of your packet after brochure. And it's the Gorse Abatement District Plan for the City of Bandon. So if you wanted to reference, that's what I'm going to be talking about right now.
One question. Is this available on the website?
All of these things are available on the website, yes, and it's gorseactiongroup.org.
The abatement plan isn't
Not
on there yet. We're working on making an official city document and updating the map. Right now, it's just in a handout phase, and it's a synopsis.
You're one of the
have a longer document.
You're one of the first groups to see this. Let's just put it that way. And it is, like we said, why don't I just jump in? So for those that are in the city, which is not you, but you have friends, no doubt, that are in the city limits, the city and the Gorse Action Group have been in a series of meetings all summer long and continuing into the fall, working on, we can't control gorse everywhere at once, so how can we do this in a prioritized way that makes sense? And a lot of thought was put into this plan, and basically the upshot was dividing the city limits into 6 different districts. And there is a map at the back, and it's a very rough map, but it will give you a general idea. The first district is what we're calling the jetty, the South Jetty. The second district is the business district, and again, that would be Riverside, Demore Mill, the Old Town east to Highway 101, the Woolen Mill. District 3 is Beach Loop Drive, so your direct neighbors here would be District 3. District 4 is the city park and the schools. District 5 gets into some area northeast and southeast of the city limits. And then District 6 is Seabird, Ocean Terrace, and that area. So again, the idea was we can't tackle Gorse all at once. How can we do this in a strategic fashion that makes sense? So the idea was we would begin in District 1, which is the South Jetty, working with homeowners, property owners, and whoever resides in that area. We do have tribal partners there as well. And that would be our unrolling of the program. The district plan was, and how did we come up with who was District 1, 2, 3 through 6? It had many factors in it, but one of the things was what's the risk to fire? Looking at topography, the direction the wind would be coming if fire were to happen. What's the density of population in the areas? Meaning if a fire were to happen, who would be most vulnerable? For instance, if we have a medical facility, or if we have a residential community, a retirement community, how are we going to get people out in terms of a fire? Schools, of course, all these type things. And types of structures. So many factors went into how are we going to start with District 1 of the South Jetty.
Where's the so-called donut hole?
Its boundaries are, what would be it, 11? What is it?
Stripes in the middle of
It's
it.
on the map,
Right in the middle?
right here, this striped area, right in the middle of your map packet. So that helps you. And it's quite a sizable area. The history of the donut hole back in the day, thought it would be a development, lots of houses put in. Is that right, Robert?
Yeah, people know the story better than I, but Bandon was developed many years ago, and some thought it was going to be the next San Francisco. It was going to be a great port. The donut hole was developed with very small lots. I think they're probably 40 feet wide and 60 or 80 feet deep, but there are hundreds of them in there. They had wanted to maximize that area for housing, and so a lot of people purchased that property. They purchased blocks of that property, and as you can see, Bandon did not become the next San Francisco, so a lot of these people left, or they never came, and so that property is largely owned by people out of the area. But it's called the donut hole because the city surrounds it about 3/4 of the way. It has a large impact on the perimeter of the city, and it's not quite in the heart of the city, but it's pretty close, and that's pretty much the story that I know.
So the 6 districts, starting with number 1, we have some timelines of we would start in the first year and then roll into District 2 the second year. This is all a sliding scale. First it depends, it's going to be adaptive of how we do in District 1 and so forth. The biggest part that we're going to be working with individuals, the Gorse Action Group, the city, and all of our partners, is developing vegetation management plans. Again, starting with District 1, we would work with those partners for each site or neighborhood, if neighbors wanted to join together, in developing a vegetation management plan. We have a sample in your packet of what one of these vegetation management plans might look like. So please, tonight, when you get home, or you can look at it now. Also, a big piece of this, besides individual vegetation management plans, is hiring somebody, a vegetation management coordinator, to help oversee development of these plans and all the intricacies that's going to be happening in developing a plan and getting Gorse control equipment and every action that has to happen. It'll be a partnership. The coordinator will work with a landowner or a group of landowners and neighbors to develop the vegetation management plan, getting them through some hurdles of maybe permits that might be needed, getting bids from contractors. And in your packet, we have a list of contractors that are currently available for Gorse control. It's in no order except alphabetized. We have quite a few businesses that are actually starting up now. They're seeing an opportunity with Gorse control on the horizon here. So we're going to be adding to that contractors list as we go forward. But I highly encourage this group, should you move forward with Gorse control on your properties, to reach out to several of the listed contractors in your packet. We're finding right now bids are kind of all over the map. And one of the resources the Gorse Action Group sees ourselves in is, if you have a conversation with us, we can help navigate that list a little bit, because we know which contractors have which equipment. It is listed on the list. and which might, if you're just doing mechanical work, if you're going to do mechanical and herbicide, some of the contractors on that list are more outfitted to one, mechanical versus herbicide. Some are outfitted to do both. So we can help you navigate that a little bit. And again, the vegetation management coordinator, when they come on, we're hoping to get them up to speed so they can help property owners navigate getting bids as well from the contractors in the area.
So this area is not part of the 6 districts. What's the timeline for this area?
That is yet to be determined. As Robert said, there's a meeting this week talking about an intergovernmental agreement, or an IGA, which would potentially, as Robert's mentioned, the first urban growth boundary area that's the highest profile is the donut hole. Robert mentioned this one's the 3rd in the list after the airport area. We'll see where the meetings go. We don't have a timeline yet.
Yeah, we don't.
2020 is not a timeline for this.
No, that's a surety. But, you know, as Carrie talks about the Gorse Action Group, that's a resource for the whole southern coast. So if this community would decide that you wanted to enter into an effort to deal with gorse down here, you know, that can happen at any time. That has nothing to do with the district plan.
And we're anticipating, even though we're unrolling District 1, then 2, then 3, if a group wants to be proactive and get a head start, that our vegetation management coordinator, once they're hired, some of our experts with the Gorse Action Group would be resources to help groups be preemptive and start working on gorse in their area. And I know some of you are already doing gorse control, you have for years. We have, like we said, summarized all the tools in our toolbox for controlling gorse, and we have information we didn't even have 5 years ago. So if you've been doing this for a long time, this is where I'll turn it over to Rochelle. We have some upcoming events, including a tour this Thursday.
Yeah, so part of what I do is plan outreach events, and I got a flyer here.
It's in your packets.
And so this Thursday the 12th, we're going to do a project tour with the abandoned trolley, and we're going to look at some successful gorse projects in the abandoned area. And then after the trolley ride, you can come down to Abandoned Brewing, and we're going to have a presentation with Frank Gorse from the OSU Extension, and myself will be there, and I'm sure Robert and Will be there as well to answer any questions about the district plan and the new vegetation ordinance. And then we will also be at the Cranberry Festival, so we'll have a booth there if people want to approach us there as well to answer more questions, and have more of these handouts as well.
I really encourage you to join us on the trolley tour. Again, it's this Thursday. The trolley will be picking us up at 3:30 at the Visitor Center. Visitor Center. And we're going to be making 5 stops. The first stop will be looking at gorse removal on steep slopes. The second and third stops will be visiting some state park properties, looking at removal of gorse and some sensitive dune habitat. Our 4th stop will be at a controlled demonstration series of plots that we've set up by the airports between Currydale and the airport. We have actual first-hand gorse control. You can see side by side, looking at different mechanical and chemical methods that we want to show people what works, what doesn't. So that'll be the 4th stop. And the last stop will be over to Moore Mill, where Moore Mill has recently done a fantastic job of gorse removal on their property at a very large scale. So we'd like to take folks there. Yeah, and I think that concludes, and we have a question. Please.
You spoke of machinery, coordinators, experts. How is that to be funded?
Yeah, that's the last part of our presentation. I know that's the first part. We have 2 pieces. One, and I know we've met with some of you, and it's small potatoes, but we do have something right out the gate which does help some landowners, and some landowners it's been very motivating for them. It's our cost share through the county for herbicide. So Will, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, the county has for several years been offering herbicides at half our cost. So we get it wholesale and then allow people who have noxious weeds like gorse to purchase it at half a price. So this is something that we're going to continue to be able to offer, because Removal is the biggest upfront cost, no question. But the only way we're going to keep gorse from coming back is to use herbicides. And we're using the safest herbicides available that work primarily on gorse. They have been shown to be the most effective. So we only have to use small quantities of it. And this is the best way, as I said, to keep it from coming back. We are, through the Gorse Action Group, looking at coming up with grant monies to help fund the upfront cost of removal of gorse.
And that's where I'll jump in. I've been sitting on many subgroups of the Gorse Action Group, but we have a finance team. And we've already been successful in receiving some grants. This ordinance just went into effect August 1st. So our finance team, over the course of this year, is going to be seeking out funding. I think our grand plan is that we will develop a pot of cost share money for mechanical upfront removal of gorse, that we can work with landowners to help offset some of the cost of gorse removal. We do not have the money in that pot, but we have two very skilled grant experts. One's out of actually both are out of Portland, that are helping us find grants for various work. This isn't the only thing we're doing. We're doing gorse projects all the way down into Curry County.
So right now, basically the ordinance goes into effect. As it stands right now, the homeowners are completely responsible for the costs.
That's not entirely true.
Okay.
We haven't started unrolling the districts yet, so that hasn't quite happened. Like I said, we're focusing on District 1. You guys aren't even a district.
Oh, I understand.
And to date, even prior to this, we've had homeowners and groups that we've worked with to do gorse control, and we have helped find money for those specific projects. So up till now, it's been piecemeal. With the ordinance not being revised before August 1st, we couldn't go after funding to help in this cause, because we'd go to a funder and say, well, what about all the people that are using it as a hedgerow, or they say they can't. We had no legs to stand on to try to get any money to help in the city abandon, because the way the ordinance was. And because it's been revised, that now puts us in a new arena where we can go after funding, because we have a strong ordinance for the city abandon.
The city abandoned had their own problems with gorse on their own
Absolutely.
items. Now, another question I have is, okay, the person takes the effort to remove the gorse from their property. What is best case disposal? Because obviously, if you just pile this gorse up, the wind blows, and here we go again.
We have some fabulous things to show you on the trolley tour to address that, and we have some things that are even kind of outside the box and futuristic as well. We've found in the last, State Parks has done a lot of work in recent years, as well as others, but State Parks is a great example. We use equipment that mulches it down into a very fine mulch. It also acts as a suppression layer for the seeds, which is a win-win. So it actually stays in place. Some of the properties, it would be piling gorse from multiple properties onto one property that makes sense logistically, and then coming in and mulching or grinding it down on site. That's something we found that works really well, versus hauling it out at a great expense, it flying out of the trailer on the way to the transfer station, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to get people away from doing. We still see it happening with some contractors. So we are going to be putting together a list of questions that folks can ask as you call if maybe you're getting 3 bids. Say you had a plumbing problem, you go and you get multiple bids, and we want to provide you with a list of questions that would make sense to ask. One of them is exactly that question. Will you be hauling this gorse off-site, or are you using what I learned about from the Gorse Action Group, mulching it on-site with equipment? Yeah. Let me talk about the futuristic. This is really cool. The futuristic, there's a technology. There's going to be a demonstration this fall. It's called an air curtain burner. And it actually burns, the forestry industry uses it, and it's not just for gorse, but we want to test it out to see if it'll work for gorse. It burns it into a biochar that actually is a good supplement for the soil. So that's a technology we're hoping in the future will be used. I know our cranberry farmers, some of our big property owners up and down the coast that have combinations of herbicides. So we found that in those plots, we do have resprouting from some of the crowns. The mulching has to be done just right, and that's why getting the right contractor with the right piece of equipment to mulch it right is so key. But we found that it suppresses the seeds.
Will, can you talk about it's a nitrogen-based plant, or how that mulch kind of basically helps kill the gorse itself? It kind of turns the gorse on itself.
So gorse is a nitrogen-fixing plant. That's what Robert's getting to. It has these little nodules on the roots that are nitrogen-fixing, which eventually creates a whole soil that is just nitrogen-rich and basically just perfect habitat for itself and only itself. It's the perfect strategy for a plant, right? And then to have seeds that last for decades in the soil, what a perfect plant strategy, right?
But I think what Robert's getting at is gorse, yes, will make its own, but it doesn't like too much nitrogen. So one of the ways of suppressing gorse, as they do out at Currydale, the big pasture area that used to be full of gorse, they mow it down. They put nitrogen fertilizer on it, and they put soda ash or base material, gypsum. Gorse does not like extra nitrogen, and it's an acid-loving plant, so if you put base material on it, it suppresses it. So in a lot of places where we've had success controlling gorse is where we've applied nitrogen fertilizer. And it helps the grasses because we plant competing grasses which use that nitrogen fertilizer.
I'd say our plots, and we'll see this at our trolley tour, that a lot of farmers in the area reclaiming pasture ground, especially if they have sheep. And we hear this all the time, especially in Curry County, of applying the nitrogen. Our plot is showing the opposite. It made the gorse grow really well, and we'll see that. But in combination, what went so well with the Gwinneps there next to Currydale is getting competing competition in there. They planted grasses in. They wanted it to be pasture ground for cows to graze. So anyways, competition, revegetation. While we talk about success with mulching, it's not a one and done like any of our worst weeds. It's a long-term battle. As you all know, you've been battling gorse for a long time. But I think one of the tools that we have to offer in developing vegetation management plans is looking at competing plants to get in. Initially, the first phase is getting something in immediately, like a grass species. But then eventually, the next year, you want to get some perennials in there. We know that shade, eventually, our timber folks have done studies in the 50s and 60s. They did a long-term study. And we know shade is the ultimate goal in our timber. And it can be here as well with different species that are planted as a long-term goal for suppressing gorse.
Shade's a problem here.
Sure. But you
Because I'm taxed on my view.
But you have dune grasses
Yes,
that
I
can
understand
provide
that.
the same concept of competing vegetation and shade. It's a different type of shade, but it is shade.
Just trying to cut the sunlight from hitting the soil.
When it's still low.
So it can be
obviously,
short
yeah.
shade. It just has to shade the seed.
Is willow a superseding plant? We have an empty lot. And we just came down to see what was going on, thinking it would be full completely of gorse. And it wasn't. It was full of willow with a few gorses interspersed. And we thought, oh my, what does this mean?
The willow indicates there's some sort of water seepage or some water
Yes, there is. The back part of the lot is sort of a wetland.
Right, so you're in a sweet spot with your property, with that being the case. But yeah, that's competing vegetation. We see willows and other seepages along here that are doing the same thing. And you're in a perfect position to get those outliers.
So you just cut them down?
You don't just cut them down. On our website, the Gorse Action Group website, gorseactiongroup.org, we have many resources of tools, A to Z. But in that situation, you said you just have a few plants here and there. One of the best methods we have in that situation is what we call a cut stump. And it's where you would use a chain, hire someone or yourself to cut the, I imagine they're pretty big.
Well, I don't know. We didn't go into
If
it.
it's small, you use loppers. If it's big, you use chainsaw.
Right.
And then immediately after you do that, you apply herbicide, one of our triclosan products, and it gets sucked down into the roots. The root stays there while it's dying slowly because these herbicides work pretty slowly in a woody plant like this.
Is that, you have to repeat the herbicide?
Often not with cut stump. Cut stump can be very effective. Again, that's only a situation where you have a few plants here and there. This is not the mother patch that's been there for 20 years.
Right.
So, I have a question. So, this is a picture taken from the Argus of overhead of the property lines. And our property is a good example of multiple issues that are going to be faced. First off, we have a 30-foot slope, about 65% grade. And so the house has been here for 40 years without any slope degradation. The second thing is that if you look at our property line, we have state-owned property here and here that is going to be, that if you look down, if you look at the Gorse, about 1/3 of it is on state property and 2/3 on our property. And the other thing you have over here is a county Gorse. So if you look at the slope, this bank here, that's Coos County. So you've got three entities. You have the county, the state, and you have us that are going to be dealing with the Gorse. So how are you coordinating those issues and specifically dealing with these type of bank issues?
Sure. I'd be happy to address all of those questions the best I can. First and foremost, State Parks is a very active member of our Gorse Action Group. I don't know if you've had the pleasure of meeting Sherry Laird. She's been in the area between 10 to 15 years, and she's been doing massive gorse removal on state park lands during that time. People told her when she first got here, no, forget it, you can't control gorse. She has proven them wrong. She's just restoring native dune habitat, and it's pretty darn impressive. Our trolley tour will take you to 2 sites on Thursday to see that work. We anticipate this is going to be a common thing. You have multiple, you have county, you have state, you have private. In fact, one of our demonstration areas, we call it the Bullards Bridge. It's right where the Coquille River and the Bullards Bridge just north of town. We have it used to be the old mill there. If you've been in the area, you remember Gorse used to cover that whole area. That is U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, ODOT, State Parks, 2 private landowners, one that does not speak English, only Chinese, and what were the other partners? Probably another partner. So we had
The tribe was in.
the tribe was involved. So we had 6 partners, and we just last year as a demonstration area, with the Gorse Action Group taking a lead role in coordinating between all those parties to get the gorse removed. So it's something that the Gorse Action Group anticipated, that this is common, that we're going to have multiple jurisdictions when we're looking at gorse in an area just as here. So we have experience doing that, and so I guess I'd say that we know that's going to be a reality in many areas. The beauty of developing a vegetation management plan, we're hoping that groups like this will want to do it on a larger scale with multiple parties, including the county, the state, and that type of thing. Because when you have multiple parties in a plan, the cost goes down for each of those entities. Because you're dealing with a contractor coming in and working on multiple properties. You're not paying for them 5 different times to do the cleanup, the mobilization of their equipment. The cost goes down when a contractor can come, especially from out of the area, but even in the area, and bring their big equipment in and do a coordinated project all at once.
Does that mean the state pays for their portion?
The state is an active partner, and yes, we've already started those conversations and they know that they have a big task ahead of them with what we're going to do. But what we're doing is rolling out District 1 first. We're going to start there, like I said, 2 and so forth, so we can focus on getting resources for each of those areas as we roll it out. Should this group want to be proactive and really start a vegetation management plan amongst multiple property owners out here, we will be a resource and we'll know that you're interested, and we can start seeking funding to help in that cost share. But State Parks is a very active member. It gets pretty legalistic in terms of where the management lines are with state parks, and I brought a whole packet of emails back and forth we've been having with state parks and how this impacts who is in charge of controlling the
I
gorse.
think I've been party to that.
You've been party to that. So that's ongoing, but know that we have a very willing state parks contingent here in this area that is very interested in removing gorse and has a lot of experience doing it. They're not going to walk away from the table in terms of getting us the best resources to do it, getting us the permits to do it, and that sort of thing.
So does it make any sense to do it in isolation, or do you need all the surrounding property owners to do it?
It makes more sense to have neighborhoods do it. Mainly, it brings down the cost, and what one neighbor has to offer, another doesn't, in terms of logistics getting into sites often, and then also staging equipment. You know, one property makes more sense sometimes than another. Access is a really big issue. Sometimes you need to go through just one neighbor's property. So that's going to be all part of developing the management plan. I mean, individuals can, certainly, but I think what we'd like to see, and I think from the pocketbook extent of things, it makes sense for multiple properties to go together.
But we won't discourage an individual from
No.
moving gorse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Carrie, I have a question that is part of Earl and my discussion, and it is, I guess maybe I'm asking a favor. We would like to start by having some kind of an engineering, a study of our slope. We would really like to understand what's in our slope, not the plants on top, but what's in it. And Earl's pretty much gone up and down the coast trying to find somebody, and so far, nobody wants to touch us. We got one answer from a guy who essentially said, I don't want to come out when I've looked at the photos, and you're going to have a hell of a problem when you take out that historic gorse. But it is, I mean, it's very scary. This is a home, it's a major investment. I'm wondering if, I know you've got more than enough to do, but if there's any way that the Gorse Action Group could talk to some of these people who are capable of doing this and say, hey, you'd be helping with this gorse removal if you'd be willing to be on a list of people who could evaluate slopes. And I can say we've already got one or two neighbors who would go into this, and we've got the cooperative part easily. But it just would really help. I don't know if our other people on the block have been smarter and faster than we are, and that's the problem. Or if they just don't want to get in the middle of something, you know, because they know that you're working very hard. You're a plant-based group, plant removal, plant put in. And we need, you know, Earl and I feel this is our step one to even think about going forward.
I invite you to come on our trolley tour.
Sorry, we have to be in Seattle. That's part of the problem too. We're part-timers. I would love to come on your trolley tour.
Okay,
We're going to be in Seattle.
Okay, perhaps we'll capture you the next month because we have another 2 tours going in October, so I can get you those dates. So you'll have three opportunities coming up. And where we're going to take you is to Coquille Point, where the slopes are this or steeper, where gorse has been removed. We are not just a plant-based group. We have experts from all different, with different expertise in different fashions. But one of the biggest things we've learned is why doesn't the slope slough off with this demonstration area we did at Coquille Point? It's because we're not plucking, we're not pulling the gorse plants out. And I think that's often the view is you just yank the whole thing out, roots and all.
No, we understand. Yeah.
And so what happens is the herbicide use works very slowly, and the root system stays intact of the gorse while you're getting other plants in. So, and this isn't the only species. I work on other places in the state. I have colleagues that work north of us here. So we have other noxious invasive weeds also that are on coastal bluffs that we
Carrie, how many years has the Coquille Point test been in place?
3.
3.
And have we had a really bad winter and we're in and out? I don't know.
The year that it was done, literally the month that it was done, it was the worst rain and winter December that we've had in a long, long time. And we were like, well, this is the test. There's drone coverage, which have drones to periodically monitor what we've been doing. So anyways, we knew that this would be, like you said, your #1 issue. And And we hear it from many, many people on the coast, and it's a valid concern. This is your home. So we needed to show people firsthand, here locally, not reference something in Australia that we've read about or something in Florence that we've read about, but we wanted to show you firsthand here, right down the road, that it can be done.
Well, okay, we'd still like experts, and then I'll make one snarky remark, which is, that area looks awful right now. As a homeowner, I don't want my slope to look like that. So when you come to our plan, I want a plan, I love the seagrasses, but, you know, I want a plan that's gonna be good looking as well as accomplishing what needs to be accomplished.
We do have a landscape architect, recently retired, many of you have worked with her, Lisa Ely, that is an active member of our Gorse Action Group, and she's one of our great experts that's lending us a lot of her years of experience exactly in this stretch of Sunset City and what would work and what wouldn't.
So if I can make a comment, the ordinance really addresses noxious weed type teas. And then it, oh, by the way, references Gorse as the primary focus. But under noxious weeds, as the ordinance defined, there are other elements of the noxious weeds that are in the coastal point. You know, so one of the primary issues I have is that based on the ordinance, we as homeowners are obligated to not just address Gorse, but any noxious type weed that may invade our property. And that would include, you know, like mustard, blackberry bushes, and there are some other ones that are primary, which is on the coastal point.
Go ahead.
We're obligated already by state law, by county ordinance. I mean, those have been identified as noxious weeds throughout the state of Oregon. So in essence, all property owners in Oregon would have to comply with those requirements because that's already there as a state. We've just codified it within our ordinance so that we as a city can deal with it a little more.
And I'll clarify there too, that's what I work on is the state noxious weed list. We have A-rated and B-rated
I know,
species.
I've been to.
Just for the benefit of your neighbors, I'd like to share that A-rated.
Actually, I'm sorry, go ahead. But actually, what I did for the meeting is I posted all of the information, and they had access to the Oregon State noxious weed list. Type A and B.
Yeah, I still think there's a lot of confusion. The only two A-listed weeds that we have on the south coast, it's an ivy that is not even in here. It's in Curry County. It's called Cape Ivy. So that's in Curry County. We have 15 sites of that ivy that we are trying to eradicate. And the other A-rated weed, it's called mat grass, and we do have some mat grass at Devil's Kitchen wayside that we have very little left of because we're eradicating it. Those are the only two A-rated. The rest are considered B-rated noxious weeds, and from a state level and a county perspective, a lot of these are widespread weeds, like blackberry. There is no way we are going to control blackberry across the state of Oregon in terms of eradicating it. But where we can help with that is someone does have blackberry on their site, and they wanted to remove it as part of their vegetation management plan. We can tell you what works to kill blackberry as part of your vegetation management plan. And I don't know if you wanted to add, there's a small list of targeted or tea weeds at the county level that are ones we're worried about. One is called knotweed, Japanese knotweed. And I don't believe you have any in Sunset City.
Yeah, they mentioned it at the meeting, a city council meeting, and there was actually a demonstration of the noxious weed.
Over by Bandon Inn, I believe they have knotweed up there.
I mean, knotweed is a good example of what we're trying to prevent another gorse from happening in Bandon, because it is as invasive as gorse. So, and blackberry's on the list, English ivy is on our T list, and part of the reason we have the T list is because we design our herbicide cost share to address those. So if people have those T-listed weeds, they can participate in cost share and get herbicides.
It doesn't mean you need to eradicate them from your property. That helps clarify. It's on the T list. It's a way of identifying noxious weeds that we know could become the next gorse. We have very little For instance, in the Knotweed, we have some by the Creamery, Bandon Creamery. Different pockets we have it in town, but 50 years from now, if we don't do anything, we believe it could be through a lot of the waterways up and down the coast, as an example.
We have our hands full with noxious weeds. Gorse by far is the worst, but right behind gorse, we have a number of other things that we need to make the public aware of, that we've got to keep these things from getting out of hand. So it's education, and where we can provide cost share herbicides. That's what we're doing.
And if you're interested in learning about some of the other noxious weeds beyond gorse, Coos County has a weed day, a noxious weed day coming up in October. It's actually Columbus Day. Monday is a Columbus Day, and it's on your flyer. We'll be taking a tour that day as well, and we'll be looking at some gorse sites, including the steep slope. And then we'll also be looking at several other noxious weeds, one called Bitty Bitty and one called Spanish Heath.
What are your recommendations for property owners and what resources might be available in the issue of security?
Security, meaning you remove the gorse?
No. Meaning those of us that live on the bluff don't worry about somebody getting onto our property from the ocean side because of the gorse. Once the gorse is gone, we're not protected anymore. So what's your recommendation and what is available in terms of assistance in that regard?
We know it's a question that's come up. We know it's one of the concerns. I don't know that we have a solution other than developing a strong plant vegetation plan when we get the vegetation coming back in. But no, we don't have a...
What type of vegetation can you plant that will keep people away as effectively as gorse?
Yeah.
Poison ivy. That's not an option for you.
It's a native plant. But no, I don't have a solution for you for that. I don't.
We were told initially that we could not put a fence along our property line on the west.
I don't know the answer to
Has that changed?
I can't address
That would be a county.
That's a county zoning issue.
I think in a state issue, I don't believe under state law we can put any kind of walls or anything. I think way back when with the beaches went public, that was part of topical. That's part of
the law.
I'm not an Oregon attorney, but I've read that much. And yeah, so I mean, it is a serious issue, and you know, Robert can address that. Bandon has a small police department where they really don't have the resources to do too much for us. The county has a small sheriff department, and you know, it's an issue.
So, one of the things that the Sunset Neighborhood Association does is we maintain our roads, because Coos County doesn't have the resource to come out and put gravel on the roads. So, and this last year we spent $7,500 on road maintenance. So I'm a little skeptical that Coos County is going to have the resources to come in and maintain their portion of the gorse that's in our neighborhood.
Yeah, I can't.
Side of the roads, we have to periodically remove the
No,
gorse.
but they own this the gorse right here, but then the sides of the roads. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean, the
roadside.
gorse, if you don't, we have to remove it to keep the roads wide enough for the emergency vehicles.
To get through. That
To
was-
get through, and we've done that at our expense, although it really seems to us that it's something that the county should have
Yeah, we
undertaken.
spent $1,200 last year
Yeah.
just doing that.
And we have to do that every few years, because otherwise the roads will be too narrow for fire truck or to address an emergency. So that's a real issue.
That's something we're going to have to look at. I mean, I cannot say for sure today, you know, what the county's going to be able to do as far as that goes.
But several years ago, we had Bob May come in and talk to us, and his basic presentation was that Coos County is a poor county. It doesn't have a whole lot of resources for funding it, other than cutting trees. And, you know, what is it, that the county is about the size of Connecticut, and they had at that time,
Delaware, I think. Doesn't matter.
whatever,
Some
but
states
they
it
had like
does.
8 sheriffs or 9 sheriffs to cover the whole county. And we were told that the Coos County won't show up unless there's somebody inside your house, and
If they're climbing in and you can identify them, you can call abandoned police and they'll consider coming, but it's not much better than.
I live in one of those counties also, Josephine County, also the bottom tier county planning. I hear you, our sheriff's department is the same situation with safety and security. And when elections come up every year, it's a big discussion.
Can I say something to this?
Yes.
It's a fact of life. We live in a poor county. We have to pay for things ourselves. What are you going to do? Are you going to ignore the Gorse, or are you going to pay to get rid of it? It's up to us.
There are some benefits. I mean, fire danger, I know we've gotten questions about recent fires, and we do have some recent fires on the coast that they got into the Gorse and it just went gangbusters. Anyone that has tried to do a controlled burn of Gorse knows how much it pops and hisses and what it can do. So again, we have seen in 2015 there was a campfire on the beach that started a fire that got into the Gorse, more towards Bandon Dunes area. But that's the most recent risk of a fire on the beach coming up a slope into potential threatening.
I will answer that. So, and I would speak for all of us, I don't think anybody loves Gorse. We can have the Gorse, what is it, with the fogs?
The one guy with
But
yeah.
anyway, so none of us love Gorse, but you know, the one thing that Gorse has done is that it's kept our bank stable. And I grew up in Seattle where the noxious weed was blackberry bushes. I mean, we had to fight blackberry bushes. And we had a place for a while in Montana where we was in the middle of sagebrush. And the number one cost for that location was fire insurance, because the sagebrush was able to catch fire. We had to keep an area mowed down around the cabin to keep the sagebrush down. You know, and living in different places is, you know, you have to put up with fires, or potential fires. Same way in Southern California. So, you know, yeah. The only thing that I will say is that by passing the ordinance, you didn't give us the chance to be good citizens. You used a hammer before coming and saying, can you work with us and can you participate in the process? You didn't do that. You hit the hammer, and so now you got to do it, and we've had the impact, financial impact of loss of property value, and the potential of all of the costs that we got to put into, kind of dealing with the Gorse.
If I may, I would like to congratulate the association for not shooting the messenger. But what you're doing is putting responsibilities on our shoulders while abdicating yours. That's all I have to say.
I have a question. Correct me if I'm wrong. Currently, the ordinance basically states get rid of it. How? Does it say how, or just suggestions? Because, say that hill right over there, when we built our house right there, we had to notify the Indian tribe within a certain amount of days we were going to disturb the ground. Would there be any difference if somebody takes a backhoe to that hill and starts ripping out the gorse? Does the Indian tribe have a statement to make about that? Because they've been very, very proactive about what goes on around here.
Oh, yeah. The Muellers next door, their building got stopped because they found a Native American, kind of cooking site right here in the corner of our property.
For months, we could look out our bedroom window and see the archaeologists digging up shards.
Those things still apply. This Gorse ordinance doesn't trump everything else. It's one of a lot of things that apply in areas like this. If I had a piece of property in the middle abandoned that was 60 by 100 and had three.
I just wanted to make one comment about the elephant in the room, which is the cost for property owners to deal with this. Even if it's not immediate, even if it's a couple years down the road, even if there's a generally positive spirit of cooperation with all these different agencies, I think the reaction of most people when they started to read about what the plan was, oh my God, you know, I have all this course, it's on a slope, it's going to be tens of thousands of dollars, I'm retired, I'm on a fixed budget, I can't do this. And so, what I'm concerned about is at some point, unless carefully managed and addressed, that can turn into a kind of anger that won't be positive.
Okay.
And you don't want that. And so I really think that it's important to look at the big picture, whether it's a tax rebate or it's, you know, or it's the counties coming together and saying we need to go to the state because we don't want to be dealing with irate property owners who, you know, who are kind of, we're educating them, we have a good program in place, we have a lot of good professionals, but I think it's really scary for a lot of people. And, you know, everybody seems like they're kind of dancing around it, and but at the back of a lot of people's minds is, I don't really have the financial means to pay for, you know, I have all this, you know, people think I'm rich because I live on the bluff, and it's not really the case. So I don't think you're going to get wholly candid answers from people if you say, what is your biggest concern? But I think people are thinking that. So I think you're going to need some, you've got this problem all over southwestern Oregon. You need to be, the counties need to be talking with the state, you know, maybe there's some federal money from USDA, I don't know. But I really think if you keep the solutions small and you have a couple of grant writers, that's great, but they're not going to find money for private property owners. I mean, I've done enough grant writing myself. It's going to be very difficult. So you need a different solution. So you have to come up with something creative that's going to make people take notice and say, well, they understand our concern and they're battling for us, even if you don't win. The fact that you're thinking about it from the point of view of property owners without unlimited means to address it.
So Eliza said, well, you don't have to worry because we're not going to get to your property until 5 or 6 years. Well, I'm going to be over 80. Yeah, you know, so how am I going to deal with this? You know, when anyway, so again,
I think I'll end it with, just so everyone's aware, the city ordinance applies to the city at this point. There are meetings ongoing of how it's going to impact the 3 urban growth boundary areas. This is one of them. I hope you heard loud and clear, this is the lowest priority of the urban growth boundaries. So, not in terms of we don't not care about you or your Gorse, but that in terms of incorporating this into what's going on in the city, you know, there are a lot of people out here that are already controlling Gorse, and that's being recognized. Yeah. And if that continues, it's going to continue to be recognized if you catch my drift. So.
Okay. So, do you have any other questions, people? Okay. So.
Can I have one more thing about the financing? When there are 35, 33 agencies, governments that have come together under this Gorse Action Group, and I would say funding is a major portion of our meetings every time we meet. We talk about where's the money going to come from, how are we going to find it, what kind of resources can we bring to bear. And we look at our own organizations and say, you know, we have 30-some organizations here who all may have a small bit of resources on their own. How can we collectively put those resources together to tackle projects? It's one of the things we do as well. But we understand that, and as far as the city goes, as I said, we've changed our tune a little bit. As long as a vegetation management plan has been created and it's being exercised, however that may be, maybe it's a 5-year plan or I don't know, then we consider that property in compliance. You know, it's the people who do not respond at all or who, you know, just blatantly deny the requirement to do anything that become more difficult. But as far as the property owner, as long as they're working with the Gorse group or some other way to put a management plan together and working it, the city will consider that, you know, in compliance. And as Carrie said, you're not part of the city, you're part of that urban growth boundary. And I don't know where that IGA discussion may be. It may focus entirely on the donut hole, and we may start with that. And then maybe a few years from now, if we can make that work, we move on to other places. But we're kind of breaking new ground in as far as noxious weed territory goes. So we have the attention of a lot of communities. We have the attention of the governor. You know, this project was named one of the Oregon Solutions projects. They brought in experts that helped get this group organized, put together a declaration of cooperation. You know, the state is aware of it, the federal government is aware of it, but because this isn't something that's been in the pipeline for a long time, we have to kind of weasel ourselves in to some of those funding sources, some of those bigger resource buckets. But I think we're making headway, and we as a city are we're very grateful for all of the organizations that have come together to help address Gorse, so that it isn't just your problem, our problem. It's a much greater realized problem. So the more resources we can bring in, the more opportunity we have to deal with it.
I have a question regarding the city. When I first read the thing, and at the very bottom was financial impact was written on there, and to the city it said none, only enforcement. So that kind of tells me that what you just said, I think the city's just saying, we don't have a problem. We do here. The city's saying no fiscal impact. How could that possibly be? Because there is Gorse on city property.
Right, but if I can take the next level, within our budget, we have resources built in there for vegetation management, for tree control, all of those things. So when we look at this different approach, within our own organization, we have to better use our resources. We have to focus them in those areas. And those are the things we're talking about. So is there a fiscal impact? No, we're not adding $50,000 to the budget with Gorse's name on it, although there are some line items in there for some Gorse-related activities. But, you know, in the electric department, we have $90,000 in there annually for right-of-way maintenance.
Yeah.
Well, in a lot of our right-of-ways, we have Gorse. So we're not just after branches. We're now looking at how can we remove the Gorse in those right-of-way areas. So it's just more of a change in mentality and focus and how we use our resources.
So you say the right-of-way, the electrical and all that. Right across the street over there is a city abandoned power, the boxes, right? City abandoned came in with their backhoe and basically shoved the Gorse out of the way, made a pile of dead Gorse against the hill, and went away. Is that going to continue?
As I said, we have to change our philosophy
please.
and how we deal with things.
Because I didn't have any Gorse on my property until that happened.
We just recently, we've had internal training as well. We've had this group come in and do training of our staff. So yes, there's education that has to take place.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. You got Jennifer, Tom, and you're taking your time.
Thank you.
We have a lot of fun. Thank you very much for having
Well,
us.
thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Oh, the rest of the meeting will be easy. Thank you very much for coming out.
Keep on recording.
Because we're going to whip through this.
Keep on recording.
Oh, yeah. Keep on recording. But, okay, that's the way it is. So just feel free to get up and get whatever you need. So, the next item on the agenda is approving the last minutes, which I basically refused to read the whole thing. Last meeting was very calm. We did the call to order, we did some introductions, we approved the minutes from 17, September 2, 17. Earl did the treasurer's report. We talked about under neighborhood business, we talked about lighting. What happened, and by the way, you know, going forward, because your lighting issues approved.
Fabulous. It was resolved before last year's meeting.
Okay.
Lighting is still a big issue for us.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. You know, the main issue, as I'm sure everybody knows, is that there are all these light fixtures which direct light in 360 degrees up and down, you know, and they need to be shielded.
So, you have a neighbor that got a
Oh, yeah, we've got 2 or 3 that illuminate our house at night.
That's right.
We sent out a kind of a notice last year, after the meeting, kind of advising of the different kind of lights and what they do, so apparently we need to do that again.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that in the, we'll do a follow-up letter, which will give you the link to our fabulous video guys, right, Stuart? So, okay, then we talked about beach fires, which is, is,
I guess we get rid of the cars, we don't have to worry about beach fires.
well, no. Then we talked about the bylaw updates. Okay, the bylaw updates are only updating the bylaws to fit what we actually do. When we actually have meetings, we actually have dues of 25 instead of 10, which the old ones say. We actually ask for a road donation. So I know I'm being a very fussy lawyer, but I need 2/3, so I need about 100 written votes. All I want to do is have this updated in case we really get involved in kind of an issue. We need to have things kind of perfect. And I had 3 coming in this meeting. I can see I've got a pile more, but please, if 1 vote per property, but I'd appreciate. And the advantage will be that I'll stop nagging, otherwise it'll be in every letter until I get, can actually say that our bylaws are up to date. Then we did the officer election, and we did the advisory committee election. Earl asked for old business, there was none. He asked for new business, there was none. And then we adjourned the meeting. So, could I have a motion to approve the meetings from September 1st, 18?
So moved.
Okay, and you're going to second? Who are you seconding? Yes. Okay, you got a motion, second, all in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Oh, we're good. Okay, Earl, it's your part of the meeting. Here's your stuff.
Yeah. So this last year, in terms of the $25 dues, we had 37 people contribute that for $925. And then for the road fund, we had 33 people contribute money for the road fund. That was 5 people down from the prior year, but because the Petersons contributed $500, that brought us to about the same total contributions for the road fund from the prior year. So that was total contributions, and we had 175. So we had total donations and road fund was $4,800. We spent this last year $7,500 on road maintenance, which included the $1,200 I mentioned for winding the road to take care of the service cars. We spent more money this last year on gravel than we had previous years. And there were 2 consequences to that, 2 reasons for that. One was the fact is that, fortunately for the city of Bandon, in a way it's kind of moving time. So, like Stuart commented, he never, I don't know how long you've been here, but a long time, they've never seen so many houses under construction. So that made the gravel more expensive. And the second thing is that we're not getting, because there's a high demand for gravel, we're not getting the quality of gravel than we had gotten previous years. Is that the first time that Josh came by, there was we paid $4,800, and he pretty well did all of the roads around here.
Venus hasn't seen gravel in 2 years.
All right, so
That's been an issue.
so it's Dawn that works with Josh on gravel.
And
So I'll make
Gorse is
sure.
over the road.
Yeah, so
And
I'll.
they don't know back any Gorse on Venus either.
Okay. So I'll make sure that that information gets to Dawn. But what I was going at secondly is the quality of the gravel isn't as good as you'll notice that when Josh came around and laid all the gravel, there was a lot of residue in it. And so with the rain very quickly, like the gravel kind of disappeared. And so we had to come back in and put another layer that I think he did in some of the primary roads. So in a way, this is a problem for us, because if we're only getting essentially $4,000 annually in donations for our roads, and we need to spend $7,500,
Yeah.
very quickly, we're not going to be able to maintain our roads to the level that we want. So it's either going to take more contributions for more members. I understand some people that fall within Sunset City are on Beach Loop, or on the other side of Beach Loop, and they feel that, well, why should I contribute $100 when I don't drive on the roads? But still, there's enough members within, property owners, not necessarily living here, but elsewhere, to be able to fund it. So, Don keeps on saying, well, if we're not able, well, I won't go there first. So, I did have a thought, and that is, if the county is going to force us to get rid of the Gorse, it would seem to me the county needs to set up and maintain our roads. If they're going to put pressure on us to do other stuff, then I think it's our obligation to push back on Coos County and say, okay, we're going to do this, but you got to start taking care of your obligations here. That's what?
When this area was originally platted, and when it was divided up into the lots that are 25 by 100 out here, it's at that point that whoever was doing that made an arrangement with the county that the county would not be responsible for the roads in this area. It's not anything that the county is deciding, last year or the year before.
But can we change that?
Maybe, but
saved to put towards that if we needed legal advice or whatever. And the roads were better taken care of as a separate account, and that people could contribute to that according to what the need was. So, is that sure enough?
Yep.
Is that quick enough?
So anyway, the larger account is for, if we want to decide to do something about the Gorse, as, kind of like a group, I don't know what.
Yeah, it's a war chest, whatever.
Yeah, it's a war chest. And at some point, I think there should be some kind of discussion amongst us as to, getting together, whether we all want to chip in for, Glennia said that there are 3 separate groups. There's the big group, the people that are on flat ground that have a lot of gorse, and people on flat ground that don't have gorse, or very little. So there's, kind of the 3 groups, and I don't know if we form separate committees or any of that kind of stuff, but
Subcommittees or whatever.
yeah, for dealing with. But I suppose an interesting takeaway from presentation is the fact is that they look at it as not being covered by the ordinance and or by the county. And the county is apparently going to thereafter getting the donut as part of the county blending it into the city's ordinance and enforcement. But that
it'll come.
Yeah, but so at least for right now, we have what I would say no legal obligation. We're not covered by the ordinance.
Not yet.
So not yet, but at least at this point in time, we have no financial impact, because it's the thing that concerns me the most is that by applying the ordinance, we took a hit in terms of our property value. But maybe that's going to be there anyway. I don't know.
One of the reasons that we came down from Seattle to join in with this whole thing is that we could walk away with the thought that as an organization, there would be a possibility of gathering our resource, our financial resource, to hire folks to do the work that is necessary to be done. And as a common voice, perhaps the pricing that we'd have to face would be less.
Well, I think that, you know, I think very definitely that we as an organization should do that. You know, I mean, there's a multiplicity of different issues that we're going to have to face, you know, kind of, well, the people with have severe slopes and how that's going to be removed, and the sourcing of plants. You know, I mean, Susanna's done a little bit of research on plants, and it's, you know, it's no slam dunk. You know, about, you know, I mean, they say, well, okay, we'll plant with native grass. Well, there, I like Ganita's response, well, native grass is weeds. And from Susanna's little bit of research is that the reason they brought European grass or American grass, which actually came from the East Coast, or gorse, is because there was no native grass to hold the sand dunes. And so anything you're going to put there is essentially going to be non-native. That is going to hold, unless you use flour or some other one.
That sounds like it's a lower priority than gorse.
Yeah, I think they're going to be fine with putting in like the American grass and perhaps the European grass, but then the question remains, you know, particularly for us on the slope, how long is that going to take hold, and you know, what's it going to take? And we've talked to a couple contractors and they say, well, you'll have to water it, and I'm thinking, wait, it's a slope, it's a slope. You know, how does this work? You know, how dense do the plants have to be? Is it a good idea for me to be pouring water down there?
I said you have to irrigate the first year.
First year?
People I talked to get it established.
But that's very different from my experience trying to garden on the flat here. I can tell you, even with the Escalonia, which loves it here, it's taken me, you know, a good 3 years of watering for things to take hold. But that's good information. So yeah, I think that, yeah.
Well,
We don't know too much.
Well, I think one thing is we don't really know the cost yet, and I think it's important that the three different groups, because within Sunset City, there's the bluff group that has to deal with steep slopes, as you mentioned, then there's the group that has flat land without gorse, and another group that has flat land with gorse. So what we could do, but we don't have to do it immediately, we could say, like, the bluff group, we could get those people could talk to the Gorse Action Group about those contractors that they think would be the best choice for this area, and just get some quotes and try to get an idea of what kind of money are we talking about, what kind of time, and so we're not having abstract conversations about it. So and you know, we're not going to have any legal obligations, or nothing's going to, nobody's going to show at our door saying pay now or we'll take you to jail. That's not going to happen for a couple of years. So I think that would be a next step, is to have a group of people and look at those economies of scale. If you want to start with a bluff group and say, okay, here's your approved list of contractors, which ones are the best for our area, let's get them over here. And I think one of the things that Carrie mentioned is that the contractors are new at this, and they don't know how to price this work yet. And also the techniques are new. So one of the things that we would flesh out is, contractors that might later be shown to be gouging because they just haven't figured out really what the labor cost is, and others that might be going in the opposite direction. So I think there's, we just got to start. And
absolutely. Well, and the other part, the thing that's kind of a concern to me is that we've struggled getting a quality entity to come and take care of our yard. Yes. Mowing, trimming, watering, those essentials. And and so now we're gonna take a hybrid of what we have here, and we're gonna put them, responsible for getting rid of the gorse on the slope and planting and everything. So I think it's going to take some flushing out of these different entities.
But it's a profitable business. So there should be contractors that are gonna be able to make money and be profitable and
I
grow
hope
their
so.
businesses. And I know Liza Elliott, who's not here today, but many of you know Liza, the landscape gardener, she's doing a lot of training. So they will have to be vetted and trained by.
And with insurance.
Yeah, one of the things they're trying to do is get some grant money to have a cleaning station so that all the equipment that's used to work on gorse on people's property is properly cleaned, so you're not spreading gorse just because the contractor doesn't really know how to clean the blades of the equipment.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. We had Juan come and cut down some of our gorse and hide it to the dump. And he was stopped by the abandoned police and almost given a ticket because he was hauling gorse and it was mostly covered, but not to the point of that the police officers, wanted.
They
They
could
said
see
next
what
time,
was, they could see what was under the top.
next time that we'll get cite your ticket. So, I mean, just hauling the stupid stuff away.
He doesn't want to do it anymore. So there are a lot of problems. We should go on.
Yeah. So anyway.
So roads, you covered, and Vicky's told us where she needs, And any other road complaints at the moment, more than usual,
Actually, generally speaking, the roads haven't been too bad, but was really disappointed with the level of gravel that they put.
Yeah. So then it's other issues, other neighborhood issues.
I don't know what I do. I know I'll put it down. So any other issues, neighborhood issues?
Yes, I would love to see someone, and thank you, Steve. He very recently fixed our Sunset City sign.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that has really bothered me. Can't there be someone to put quickcrete, dig a hole and keep it permanent upright? Steve finally staked it, right? Didn't you beat some stakes down in there so it's upright again? But, with storms, because there's no concrete in it.
Yeah.
But I think it makes the neighborhood look much nicer if that sign is upright and straight. And I have another request, is that, I see the names of committee and the election of, the officers, but I would love to have emails or phone numbers of those people
Yes,
to contact throughout the year.
Well,
yes, we could put it in the letter.
we would, we have a subset of emails, and that when I send out notices, you have, I think I actually sent a blank copy, and I don't think that, I don't think everybody is able to see that.
Vicki wants ours, and we could certainly put the officers in the letter you're going to send out fall.
Well, I have Earl's, and I don't want to keep bothering you now that you're treasurer and secretary. But I think instead of waiting to our yearly meeting to bring up issues, it would be nice maybe to hear them throughout the year and get them fixed throughout the year instead of piling all this on once a year.
It's a good idea. We can do that, but in general, it would be great if we had everybody's email. For example, Liza and I were trading emails about today's presentation, and she sent me her kind of opinion piece. And it was mid this last week, and she wanted me to distribute it. And I think she's quite irritated that I didn't. Well, it's a day's job. We stopped 155 envelopes to send the written part out because we don't have very many emails. And frankly, we didn't have a whole day to put into just sending out Liza's letter. We will certainly send it with the letter that talks about this meeting, but it would be. I think what she was assuming is that we had a terrific block where we could, for free, fairly fast.
So every year when I get ready to send out the letters, I go through the county assessor's records, and I look at everybody's property and endeavor to find out who it is that owns it and their address. And the first thing that's amazing is the level of turnover in the area, and I think it's actually increased as the economy has got better and people that have owned property for a long period of time are looking to sell. The second thing is I'm amazed at how many return letters I get off of the county assessor's addresses. So there is a pile, actually the pile is upstairs, and we sent out 155 letters, and I think I got 10% back.
We got 13 back, but that doesn't count Stuart and Robin, because we spotted the fact it was their California address. We knew it was no good, and so
we know that they
didn't put a stamp
moved
on
out
it.
of stuff.
And I just looked at the date of the meeting minutes, you were the rest.
Yeah, so anyway, well,
I need to read it.
so I think, so are we to the point of
So,
doing officers?
yeah, we're
Any
actually
other
to
old-
the end.
Any other new or old business that people want to bring up? Yes?
I don't know how we could do this, but does anyone think it would be beneficial to have a list of everyone who's a member and their phone number and address? Because, and it would just be volunteer.
Or
that you
email.
do this. Just, well, so what if I see somebody that I don't think belongs at a certain house, but I don't know who, I don't know how to get in touch with these people and
Yeah.
say, hey, somebody's trying to.
I think that would be a very good idea.
Our
you know.
old association that
Well,
belongs to
because-
did that.
Because we have a fair number of rentals here, and so it's hard to really keep track of who should be here and who is not. And what, 5 years ago, Susanna? 5 years ago,
No,
6 years
before
ago?
we did the addition, so.
So, okay, so 6 years ago, we had during December and January, we had a rash of break-ins where a group from California was up and working in the area and broke into a bunch of, particularly the rentals, and were, stealing TVs and kind of easy to fence stuff. So, I mean, there's going to be times where, but we talked about seriously at that point of putting some type of video camera in the area and recording that kind of stuff, but it quieted down, and the Anchor House was hit right here, and a couple of houses, for the rentals off of there, so I mean, yeah, I mean, that's a,
But we should ask, we'll ask for volunteers. Your letter's getting more complicated.
I know, well, that's so fine. So, the last thing is that we really ask for other people to become involved and be officers or those. Is that Susanna and I have been secretary treasurer for, I don't know, 5 years, something like that. And we'd like to be able to turn this over to somebody else to be able to take the reins that are a little bit younger blood and that have an interest in the community. And I don't know what Don's interest
Well,
is.
Don, I know that Suzanne, Don's wife, said he'd do it for 1 more year. So, of course, we said that last year. But truly, we need more people who want to be involved. We'll do the officers first, then we'll do the advisory committee. Glenita and Cynthia are the advisory committee at this point, and we really need them. But, you just look at what we're coming up with Gorse, and that's a committee where we ask for people with kind of expertise who, just might want to be in the conversation. And, I mean, right now, we could definitely use, we lost our 2 lawyers who were on that, so we could use that. We could use somebody who knows something about plants, about, or my thing, engineering structure, particularly the dunes and the bluffs. And I mean, it's not, basically, none of us do a lot of work. Earl does because of the finances and because he puts together the list of people. That's time consuming, but basically this is not a big demand, but we really need other people to be interested in it. So, that said, you should get first to the election of officers for the next year.
Yeah.
Which,
So you want to do?
well, the proposed slate is Don Broyles as president. I would say about Don that he really has a lot of contacts. He knows people. That's why he's the gravel roads guy, and he has a lot of history. So I think it's to our benefit at this point. if we keep him on. Patricia Vale is vice president.
Yeah,
Yes,
she-
I'm all in favor of this.
And she agreed to do this again next year.
And she's
And they
gonna-
kept their word.
And she's
But I'm
gonna
going to be moving into my house and by
Yes.
the end
Yes.
of October, I was told, so
Oh,
I
good.
will be willing to do more things.
Excellent, excellent. And then Earl and myself as secretary and treasurer. So is there any discussion? Do we have a
Okay, do we have a
motion?
motion? No
I
motion?
shall move.
Okay, and a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't see you second, did you?
And,
Okay.
So all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed?
And then we
We
get,
have a motion for the advisory group.
well, do we have anybody, is there anybody in the room who feels they could offer an expertise, who'd be willing to serve on the advisory committee with Lenita and Cynthia, and maybe even has an interest possibly of learning more and taking an office, but anybody would volunteer your expertise, would probably take it, please. We really need more people.
I'll do it.
You'll do it? Okay, Doug will do it. So that means that we now have a proposed slate of Lenita, Cynthia, and Doug. Discussion?
We have a
Motion?
motion?
Sept.
Okay. And a second?
Second.
Patricia?
Can I second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, do we have anything else, or
Anything else, or
we got to call for adjournment?
do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Okay, Mike. Second? Nobody wants to go home.